Discuss the final report on the 231 calls to justice from the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We are joined now by Kim Bodin, the National Vice Chief of the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I want to first start with how important this inquiry has been to you and to Canadians as a whole.
It's very important. It certainly adds to what we've been saying in terms of the Congress for many years, and it's come. And what I really like about it is that it was built around what their voices and what the community is saying as well, and it's very important.
The inquiry concluded that genocide was committed against Canada's Indigenous peoples. On the onset yesterday, when we heard from the Prime Minister speaking, he did not use the word genocide. He later did at an event in Vancouver later in the day. Do you wish he had acknowledged that it was genocide in his first moment in front of the crowd?
Well, in fairness to him, I mean, it was a very, very bold statement in terms of what came out of the report. And I think that between when the report was released and what was said, and he had an opportunity to digest it, then he probably thought, yep, it certainly would fit in terms of the government and their reaction to it. So yeah, I'd have to say that it was an important statement for him to make.
What do you say to the people who say this, who don't believe this was genocide?
Well, I mean, I'll give you really good examples. We'll talk about, like for example, the band that I came from, the First Nations band in Alberta, in the late, well, not late, the late 20s, around the 1928. The federal government, they literally starved us out. Like my relations were literally starved out in terms of policy. They weren't allowed, they didn't have any food. You take a look at the road allowance people in terms of Métis people. Again, that was a policy that they basically said to Métis people, you don't even belong in this country. So that's why they were living on, that's how the term the road allowance, they lived on the side of the road because there was a road allowance by the federal government and including the provincial government. So Métis people had to live on the side of the road. So it was tough, very tough.
So in your mind, it was no doubt genocide?
There was no doubt about it, yeah.
Is this a wake-up call to Canadians, having this inquiry now completed and in front of us?
Well, it's been a long process. We've been calling for it for a very long time, over 10 years. And yes, it certainly is a wake-up call. And it adds layers to all the other reports that came out, like TRC, for example, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People, and that came out a number of years ago in the 90s. And yeah, it's very, very important. It's a wake-up call.
231 calls to justice for the governments, for the private sector. Do you expect changes to happen as a result?
Well, we're hopeful, but I know that governments tend to react right away is, how much money is it going to cost? Like, is it going to add to the federal budget and in terms of our particular Aboriginal programs and that? And I don't think they should even look at that at all. I believe that they can implement policies, whether they're federal or provincial, to address a number of the issues within the report. And whether they'll do that or not, I'm not sure. I'm hoping they will. Some of the things, for example, in the TRC report was they've implemented some of those. But on the other hand, the Royal Commission report that was released, it collects dust today. So it's on there, and that term was actually brought up yesterday. That they promised that the report would not collect dust.
Yeah.
I recall that Mr. Trudeau saying that. So.
And you worry this one could collect dust too?
I'm worried a bit, yeah.
Have you seen any changes from the government and policy so far that reflect these recommendations? Well,
my area in terms of is justice, and when I look back, 5 years ago, for example, in terms of our federal corrections, at that time 25% of the prison population were Indigenous. Today, we're almost hitting 30. And that's a staggering number. Yet we keep throwing money into correctional services, and like they have a $2.6 billion budget, and out of that, 6% of the budget is for community initiatives. Wow, we're almost a ratio 1-to-1 in terms of staff, and in terms of the prison population. So, and then of course you have children in foster care in record numbers. And one of the other disturbing numbers in terms of that really bothers me is the amount of Indigenous women that are in our prison system, and it keeps growing at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
And that's just not good.
There's a lot of work to do.
There's
still.
a lot of work to do, yeah.